In today's video, I'm going to be sharing 3 things to help build your music teaching business. And they're 3 things that really helped me when I was rebuilding my business after COVID and after having my daughter. I've been a freelance musician for about 15 years now, and that's been a combination of gigs and teaching. So over that time, I've really learned a lot about how to work for yourself. I think these 3 things, when I implemented them, they really changed everything, particularly for my music teaching business. So my business is now stable, it's profitable, it actually works for my life. I feel like my work-life balance is much better now, especially when you consider that I have a toddler who I want to be as present with as I possibly can. And when I think back to what my teaching life used to look like, it certainly felt a little bit more chaotic. I would often be driving to teach my students. I would allow myself to be haggled on price. I remember students just kind of being dotted around everywhere in my diary over the course of the week. There was no real rhyme or reason. So it felt like there was no routine to it. It was very sort of higgledy-piggledy over the course of the week. And it just took a lot of energy to keep driving to everybody. And I knew I wanted more students, but at the same time, I just didn't know how to fit more students in to the time that I had available. When COVID hit, obviously, that changed a lot of things, and I had to stop teaching for a while. And then, of course, I took some time off after having my daughter. So it was really during that sort of downtime, I had a chance to take a step back and really rebuild it from the ground upward into what it is today, which, like I say, just feels so much more aligned and peaceful, stable, and it just works really well for my life. So, the first concept I want to talk about today is the concept of boundaries. And this takes many forms when you are a music teacher, a private music teacher. The first big change that I started to implement was teaching from home. And this really changed everything. And just having the confidence when people get in touch, just to say, yeah, let's sort you out with some lessons. I teach from my home, and then give the postcode so they can work out how they're going to get to you. And if they have to have a teacher who travels to them, well, they're going to need to find another teacher, because I only teach from home now. There is no way I'd be able to teach the number of students I have if I was trying to travel to everyone. It would just be impossible. And alongside that, I really sort of firmed up my teaching hours. I decided how many students I'm happy to see over the course of a day or a week, and what times I wanted to teach as well. Again, this just lent an air of stability to the whole schedule that's just made it feel so much better. So now I teach for 45 minutes and I have 15-minute breaks in between. So I teach on the hour. I know that I don't want to teach more than 8 students a day. So quite often for me, that's 4 in the morning or 4 in the evening. Or if I know I've got my daughter in the evening, then I'll try and have the afternoon, morning and afternoon on those days. But that's the beauty of it. You can make your own schedule and set your own hours. And that also means that you sound so much more credible when people get in touch. I can't believe I used to say, oh, when's good for you? Anytime's good for me. What's going to be best for you? Whereas now I know exactly what hours of the week I want to teach. And I know that I don't want gaps. So let's say in an evening, I know I'm happy to teach at 4 o'clock, 5 o'clock, 6 o'clock, and 7 o'clock. And let's say I've already got someone at 5 and someone else inquires. I would only offer them either the 4 o'clock or the 6 o'clock, because I don't want to have too much waiting around time. The last thing you need is like someone at 4 o'clock and then no one till 7 o'clock, and then you've got some sort of dead time in between. So that's been really fundamental as well, just being really clear, setting the container, if you like, of the hours that I'm happy to work, and then finding that, yeah, people are available to come in those gaps and just make the schedule really workable. The next thing I wanted to talk about on this topic is the topic of cancellations. It's a tricky one. when you work for yourself. You have to sort of set your own cancellation policy and then make sure that you're always sticking to it as best you can. What works for me at the moment is a 24-hour cancellation policy. So, whatever the reason, if a lesson needs to be changed or rescheduled or cancelled with less than a full day's notice, I do still charge for that lesson because I'm not going to be able to fill the gap. I'm not really going to be able to do anything else in that time. To me and to my students, because I always mention this on day one, it's never been a problem at all to put that boundary in place. And I do make sure to mention it in the first lesson. People always say, oh, yes, of course, that's fine, absolutely. So now when they cancel, I'll usually get a message, obviously I'll pay for today, but I can't make it. I'm really sorry. See you next week. So that's been a big change. And coupled in with that is the way that I take payment for lessons has changed a lot. I now invoice my students, whereas they just used to transfer me the money for that lesson. It just became a lot to keep track of, all these payments sort of floating in. Some people paid on the day of the lesson, some people paid a few days later or before. And it just became a little bit laborious to try and keep track of who'd paid for what. And it also meant that if someone did cancel last minute, I had to reinstate my policy. Oh, just to remind you of the policy, I will still need payment for today, which never felt particularly good for me to have to keep reminding. But now that I have changed to invoicing, and I'll speak a bit more about invoicing and finances in my next point, but because I invoice, I just keep a note on it, everyone's invoice of what lessons they've had, and then I email that invoice automatically at the end of the month. And if someone makes a cancellation, has to change their lesson, then I just put it on the invoice as a late cancellation, and I don't even have to reinstate the policy. I know I've spoken to them about it. I know they're happy about it. So I can just message them back saying, okay, see you next week. Thanks for letting me know. But on the invoice, I'll be putting late cancellation and I will be charging for my time. So your action step for this first concept of boundaries is to officially somewhere write it down. What hours are you willing to teach and where are you going to teach from? And once you have that schedule, then you'll start to see where you have gaps that you can fit people in and how it's all going to fit together, and just see how it makes you feel about your weekly schedule. Because for me, it just made a world of difference. Okay, concept number 2 is pricing and finances. It can be tempting sometimes to just not look at your bank account at all and just like pretend that, money is not a thing in our lives. But as musicians, as self-employed musicians and music teachers, it's really important that we treat our business as a business and that we are aware of how things are going financially. Really do take a deep dive into your finances if you can. Set your teaching rate. Now then, my advice would be try and get everyone on the same rate. For me, I feel like that's fair to everyone. So you need to decide a rate that you're happy to do the work and you're happy that your students are getting good value. And you also need to make sure that you're not undercutting anyone local, because word gets around and you start to feel like you may be treading on people's toes a little bit. So try and stay in line with what others are charging. Definitely don't charge a lot less. But yeah, just try and find a rate that you are very happy with. And don't forget to increase it from time to time as well, because sometimes we find that we've been charging the same for like 5 years and everything around us is getting more and more expensive. The amount that we charge needs to be sort of keeping pace with the cost of living in general. So just really stay on top of what your rate is and make sure that you're really happy with it and be unapologetic about it. I honestly wouldn't allow myself to be haggled. It's very rare that someone tells me that I'm too expensive, but if they do, that is the price is the price. And I totally understand if that is too much for some people. But as far as I'm concerned, maybe they'd be better off with a different teacher because I'm not happy to accept a lower rate just because I've been haggled on it. I'm going to talk briefly about financing software because I started using Free Agent maybe about 2.5 years ago. And again, it's just been a real game changer to have such a clear picture of the finances of my business, sometimes I can be feeling like, oh, things are really quiet at the moment, or maybe I'm not doing so well. But if I actually go onto Free Agent and have a look at my figures, usually I'll find that I'm actually doing better than I was last year and the year before. So sometimes how we feel emotionally about how things are going is not a true reflection of what's really going on in your business. And you can look at all your expenses and see if there's anything that you can sort of save there. I do my invoices on Free Agent and it emails them automatically. And if people are late payers, it will automatically chase them at a recurring interval that you decide. So it's just really, really handy. I can't say enough good things about it. And because I do use it, I have a referral link for, I think it's a 30-day free trial and 10% off. So if you're interested in that, I'll leave the link in the description for you to go and have a look at Free Agent. It's well worth it. So the action step for this second concept, pricing and finances. Firstly, if you don't already have a business bank account, you definitely need one. Um, your HMRC will be much happier. It'll make it so much easier to do your tax return and to just make it clear which money is in your business and which money you are paying to yourself to pay the bills and to live. Having that separation is absolutely key. So if you don't already have a business bank account, definitely look into getting one. Mine is with Starling, and it's a free business bank account if you already have a personal account with them, which I think is really good. The first part of this action step is to have a business bank account if you don't already, and then to set your rates, find a figure that feels really good to you, that you're happy to work for, and is good value to your students as well. The third and final concept I wanted to talk about today that really started to make my teaching business grow a lot was visibility. And specifically, I'm talking about a Google business listing. We all need to have one if you're a business owner, especially if you're teaching in person and you want to be found by local people. I think there's a lot of experts out there who are telling us we need a lovely website and we need to build a following on Instagram, TikTok, blah, blah, blah. But I think a Google business listing is an absolutely essential first step because you need people to be able to find you if they're just Googling piano teacher near me or flute teacher near me. It's just very, very important. And if you have existing students, you can ask them to leave reviews. I would put a few pictures on there as well of you with your instrument and of your teaching space. I think people really love to get a feel for you and a feel for what your lessons are going to be like before they inquire. You just get a feel for a space, don't you, and for a person. It's just really helpful. And the Google business listings are always at the top when you do a search. Before you worry about a fancy website, before you start putting all your time and energy into social media, just make sure you've got that initial Google business listing just to get you off the ground and to keep you visible in your local area. For me, my Google business listing has brought me more teaching inquiries than social media ever has. And when you think of the time and energy that we put into social media sometimes, I just find that unbelievable. It's so much more worthwhile to take this first step and just make sure you've got a Google business listing. So I've got one final bonus tip for you, and that is confidence. If you're going to be teaching, sometimes we can start to think, oh, do I have anything valuable to share? And my answer to that is, of course you do. You know, if you've been playing your instrument for a long time, you've taken your exams, you've got qualifications, you may even have a degree on your instrument. So you absolutely do have something of value to share. And you're sharing your love of music just as much as anything else. It took me a long time from when I think back to the start of my career. Maybe I thought, oh, I'm not really a qualified teacher. I'm just a performer. But over the years, and as I've gained more and more students, I've realized, yes, I can help people and I can teach them in an effective way, and people enjoy their lessons and they improve. And is just a really positive experience for everybody. Believe in yourself, especially if you're just starting out, and know that you have so much to share. You're very knowledgeable on your instrument. Let's just go over the action steps one last time. You need to set your teaching hours and your schedule, find one that you're happy with. You need to review your pricing, set your rates, and don't forget you need a business bank account as well. And if you want to look into that software link for Free Agent, have a look in the description. And the third step is optimize your Google business listing. So I'd love to know which one of these you're going to implement first. Let me know in the comments. Don't forget to subscribe to my channel, and I will see you in the next video.